Everyone, thank you so much for joining. My name is Alexandra Clare and I'm one of the founders of Recoded, a non-profit tech organization preparing talented youth in conflict-affected areas
how's it going?
into the digital economy as software developers and tech leaders. Just a quick ground rules which we're going to go through, but if everybody could just quickly mute their mic, that would be highly appreciated. So today we're doing the second session of 4 events focused on bridging the digital inequality divide in the Middle East. And today's session, we're going to be focusing on recruitment strategies for refugees. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to our moderator, Daniel Schaefer, but first I wanted to go through a quick round of ground rules just so we ensure a really great discussion today. So the panel is going to last an hour and we're going to have 4 panelists. Please use the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen to leave comments throughout the panel discussion or ask questions, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. You can do that now or anytime during the session. Our team is going to gather all the questions and direct them to the moderator. We won't be able to go through all the questions, so please respect that the moderator will have discretion in terms of which questions get chosen and answered by our panelists. Again, just mute your mic during the session and please don't unmute yourself, but feel free to have your camera on. The session is going to be recorded and will be made public on YouTube and on Recoded's website and social media afterwards. So we'll kick off. So we're very excited to be doing this session today. It's really because we have an incredible partnership with Bloomberg. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel Schaefer, who's the German Bureau Chief of Bloomberg, who's going to introduce our session and our speakers today. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra, and welcome everyone. It's really a pleasure to host you all. I hope you can hear me well. I had some problems with my microphone, but I really hope you can hear me well. And as I said, it's a pleasure to host you all for this second joint session of Recoded and Bloomberg on bridging the digital inequality gap. I'm excited that we're able to bring all of you together from so many countries and regions to talk about this hugely important topic. I would like to introduce you today with a number, and that is 79.5 million. 79.5 million, that is, according to UNHCR's latest statistics, the number of forcibly displaced persons in the world at the end of 2019. 26 million of those are refugees, and the vast majority of them in developing countries. This is not only a staggering number, but behind those numbers are real people whose fates have often turned for worse as the global pandemic cut off access to asylum and led to food insecurity and loss of livelihoods. So how can refugees be brought back into the job market? And how can companies adjust recruitment strategies and help support vulnerable communities? And what skills will refugees in the Middle East need to enter the digital economy? These are among the questions that I would like to discuss with all of you and our panelists in the next 50 minutes or so. And for that, I'm delighted to have 3 very distinguished guests with me today. First, we have Raya Devi from Bloomberg. We have a real expert with her on the Middle East. She's only recently moved to New York, but before that spent 12 years in Dubai as HR and recruitment manager for Middle East and Africa. And secondly, we have Marcello Bonato, who as co-founder and CEO of Recoded, has a wealth of first-hand experience in bringing together governments, companies, and social enterprises to improve career perspectives and education. And last but not least, and I hope she has managed to join us. If not, hopefully she'll be there in a few minutes. We have Shahid Ali Al-Ghuzi, who came as a refugee from Syria to Turkey in 2013 and has since made an inspiring journey that resulted in a graduation in computer engineering and in her current job as engineer at Turkcell's artificial intelligence team. Shahid, Marcello, Ria, a huge welcome to this session. Let me start with you as we enter the discussion, Marcello. Let me start with the topic that has impacted all of our lives in the past 6 months or so, COVID-19. How has the pandemic, in your view, exacerbated the difficulties for refugees to enter the digital economy?
Well, Daniel, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be with you and the other guests here for this session. It has changed our lives and the lives of everyone here in so many ways, right? So as an organization, we are going through really fundamental changes since the pandemic started, but I can only imagine how this has affected the lives of people who have been displaced and who already find many challenges in their daily lives. I think because we're now in the 4th to 5th month of this pandemic, we don't know exactly how this will affect populations who have been displaced. I think suddenly everyone has gone into an emergency mode where we are all trying to figure out how to make sense of this new reality. And I guess that has come much to the detriment of populations that have been affected by conflict, because now the focus is elsewhere, and these talented young people in so many countries are still dealing with the same problems that they have before. I think the first very tangible way that they have been affected is that hiring has been put on pause for a lot of industries, and it's a little bit harder for them, especially those who are really young and coming out of university, to find employment. But I think it also creates an opportunity when it comes to remote work and digital skills, which is the topic that we all cover here. There will be a higher demand for that kind of work, and companies will be seeking employees that not only are able to demonstrate proficiency with those digital skills, but also who can demonstrate also resilience in adapting to this new reality. So I can't say for sure how much this will affect the displaced populations in the short term, but I can say that this may open up an opportunity for those who want to upskill themselves in digital skills and find an opportunity to work for a company remotely abroad as well. So we're going to be discussing a lot of the obstacles for refugees to enter the digital economy and to be hired internationally. But I think also the pandemic has, in a certain way, open up an opportunity for those who want to transcend their borders and work for companies abroad.
Okay. And has it impacted the programs that Recoded offers itself? Has there been an impact on that as well?
Yeah, it has had an impact, and it has been an incredible past 5 months with the organization. It was March 15th when we decided to go completely remote, not only our teams, but also our programs. And that was quite a heavy lift, because in 1 week we had to, and that week I should say we were starting a boot camp in Iraq, and then we have boot camp starting in Istanbul. So we really had to adapt really quickly and understand how we could offer our educational experience online. We are known for having a very individual approach to students, and being part of our community is what makes the Recoded experience special. So we had to understand how we could transplant that experience online very quickly. So the team has been amazing, trying to figure out how we can break classes into rooms so that we can still have the project-based learning approach that we usually have in class. We also made sure that our trainers were having more follow-ups with our students so that they felt engaged, that they were still able to work on their projects with their peers, which is something critical, especially at the end of the program. So it has been a huge change, but also it has fundamentally changed how we see our educational approach. And I think there is an opportunity here for us to improve the distance learning experience. It's something that we have been getting used to for the past 5-10 years with the likes of Udacity, Udemy, edX, which is great for the dissemination of information. But now we have an opportunity to offer a better distance learning experience for people across the globe, but in our mission, for those who have been displaced by conflict. So we're just in the beginning of those changes. And I think there's a lot to be looking out for in this space, because we as an organization, at least I can say, we're coming up with a lot of new exciting changes on the education front in the next 6 to 12 months.
That's great. Just to pick up on one of the points you made there, Marcello, and to ask Ria about this, one of the points that he made is that there's actually also an opportunity in what we've seen happening this year, in terms of we've all gotten used to working from home since the pandemic, and companies have been forced to adapt with that respect as well. So Ria, from a recruitment perspective, has the virus changed the equation in the sense that employees can be recruited much more remotely? And is that a chance for talent in those countries? Ria, are you there? It seems like she has dropped off. At least we can't hear her.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yeah. Yes, I can.
Somehow I got muted. Apologies. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, I think how you both just said, and Marcello's just said, the biggest working from home experiment at the moment is ongoing. And this does bring opportunities for those who have access to IT and technology and internet access and possibly somewhere to work. The Middle East region is actually a really fascinating region. You know, it's the countries that are really typified by a large public sector, huge population growth, interestingly low female participation rates in those countries often. And as you rightly said, layer on top of that, COVID has really seen a lot of job losses across these countries. With disproportionate impact on our refugee populations. So the pressure is definitely real, but I think, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. There's been a wealth of research across the Middle East region, which really looks at and goes back to the earlier points that were made around this digital nomad. You know, the virus has probably accelerated more than ever some of the opportunities to be able to work remotely. And I think the biggest opportunity therefore is how can we look at skill sets that are going to be transferable to this new world potentially in the future. I think I will also say not all companies are going to go digital. And so, you know, there is a lot to be said for collaboration and workplace and working together in the offices. So for those people who don't have access or want to work remotely, I think there's also opportunities there as well. In the Middle East specifically, you know, the wealth of research looks at what particular industries look to be promising for recent graduates or graduates of the future in 2020 and beyond. And again, artificial intelligence and technology is definitely at the top of that list, but also banking and finance, telecommunications, petrochemicals, obviously, with oil and gas. And an interesting other sector, which I actually work in at Bloomberg, is that of media and communications. And whereas the Middle East region often follows the patterns of the global job involvement, the Middle East actually has opportunities here, which the rest of the world doesn't. So I think there's definitely opportunities still outside for recent graduates.
Okay. Thank you very much. You know, there are a lot of opportunities, as you pointed out, and we have one participant on the panel who's been grabbing the opportunity. Shahid, besides of the short-term impact of COVID, there are also some more longer-term barriers that prevent refugees actually from entering the workforce. What kind of barriers did you experience after you fled Syria and came to Istanbul?
Actually, hello, first of all.
Hi.
One of the first barriers that comes to the one set is the language, because the language, the native language for refugees somehow is not the native language of the country that they're in. So the first barrier is the language. After that comes, if you learn the language and you are able to work with a fluent one, you're also you will also face another barrier, which is the restrictions that you will have to start working. For example, if you're, I don't know, it changed from a country to another, but when I first started, I had an ID that is specific for one city, and you cannot leave that city and work in another city. Otherwise, like the choice or the solution is to change your address, but you cannot change your address if you don't have a work permission. And it's, an endless loop. If you have a work permission, you should have a residency in the same city. So, these are the basic two barriers at the beginning: language and the restrictions that are made by hosting countries.
What did you think of your own future and chances of finding employment when you first came to Istanbul?
Actually, I didn't scare of not finding a job or not being able to work. What I was afraid of is not finding the thing that fits my qualifications and fits my goals in life. So these were my thoughts of, I wasn't caring about finding a job or not. I was caring about finding a job that meets what I want. And I guess not everyone thinks about this. Not everyone is able to think about this, because some people has some, financial issues that force them to work in something that they don't want. So these were my thoughts generally.
Yeah. Marcello, one of the things that I just now has mentioned is, or one crucial thing is the access to higher education. And to what extent is in your experience, is there a big differential from country to country in when it comes to access to higher education?
Yes, it does change from country to country, and it really depends on how formal and the frameworks that they have in place for refugees to gain access to higher education. And sometimes the informality is beneficial. Sometimes the framework helps a little bit better. So in the case of Turkey, for instance, it does help for you to have your papers in order so you can gain access to higher education. There were a lot of Syrians who ended up able to pursue their higher education degrees in Turkey, and that eventually can lead to citizenship in the country as well. So this is a way that a lot of Syrians in Turkey were able to gain access to employment without so much of the challenges that they might face if they don't have the nationality. In places like Iraq, where we also work, there are a lot of programs encouraging Syrians to gain access to university, but the whole system is a little bit more informal. It comes through the incentives of international and local organizations working to facilitate access to education, but there's not a organized pathway to citizenship or employment after that. So the residency situation in the future becomes a little bit more unclear, and finding a job a little bit more difficult. But then you have, I should say, when I think about Shahid, and if you allowed Shahid for me to tell a little bit how we met for the first time, when Recruitment was invited to have a program in Şanlıurfa in the south of Turkey. And I had never heard about Şanlıurfa before, much to my ignorance, because it's a place that is very near to the birth of civilization and very special place for humankind. But I and Ali, we had a meeting at a university there, sitting down with several young students and some people from the community. And Shahid was one of them. And what Shahid was saying about pursuing a career with a purpose, which is something that really resonates with us, because that's why we wanted to start Recoded, to give young people like her a career with a purpose. I remember that, I don't know if it was Ali or I, but we asked the question, what do you want to do if you had an opportunity to continue your education and learn through one of our programs? And she said, and I hope I'm not paraphrasing you incorrectly, Shahid, but you said that you wanted to find ways to work at the intersection of AI and biomedicine. And you know, it blew me away. And I know we'll have the chance to discuss how the private sector can facilitate opportunities for refugees, but I would start by saying that the quality of the talent of the people being displaced by conflict is amazing. The fact that they were pushed out of their countries does not say anything about their skills, about their drive, about their perseverance and their ability to learn. So getting access to the university system is one step in the right direction. And I think that needs to be more formalized in host countries, but it's just one step for them to achieving their goals and finding a career with a purpose.
In that context, in your view, how much of an issue is discrimination of refugees in preventing, access to education and to other areas?
Yeah, that unfortunately happens. And I'm going to just answer this question based on my experience. I don't want to be unfair because I think discrimination occurs in any country. It does occur in the countries where we work. And I'm saying this from a privileged position because I don't go through what they have to go through. So anything that I say is coming from a place of privilege. I have no idea what the people that we train that go through our programs and other people who have been displaced have to endure in different countries to actually, make a living and have a career. But from what I could observe in places like Iraq, for instance, the hiring process is very unclear. So when someone wants to be hired, usually it goes through a whole network of people who are usually hiring people they already know. So sometimes if you are Syrian, you will face discrimination if you're trying to get a job. It's not a coincidence that a lot of Syrians end up working in the NGO sector because they are working with that population. So there is an opportunity for them to work there. And in Turkey, the same, there has been tensions. It's unavoidable, a country that has received 3.5 million Syrians not having to deal with the overwhelming fact that now they have to incorporate a lot of that population into the workforce. So there are clashes, there are tensions, especially in cities that are smaller and have absorbed a lot of the refugees. But I also think that once you start to try to find a way to formalize their entrance into the workforce, then you facilitate those opportunities on both ends, right? And we work with technology. And when it comes to technology and highly skilled individuals, I think the opportunity is even higher because there is not a competition for jobs that are lower paid. And then you open up a possibility for highly talented, educated refugees to contribute to the economy at the highest levels.
We'll talk about the right kind of skills that are needed a bit later as well. But before that, I'd like to turn to the issue of what actually companies can do, and what they are already doing. Ria, when it comes to inclusion, is it sometimes hard to debunk some of the stereotypes around refugee communities? And you have many communities represented at Bloomberg. Could you tell us more about how you engage employees with those, sometimes sensitive topics? And how can a strong company culture help with that, really?
Yeah, no, good question. I think from a Bloomberg perspective, we do have lots of communities. And when we talk about communities in this sense, for people who are listening, that's really around employee resource-led forums, because they're often called that in other companies. Key to our philosophy and our culture at Bloomberg are these communities. And we have over 5,000 employees across the globe represented in 9 different communities. The communities range from LGBTQ and allies to Black professionals networks and allies to the Women's Group and the Working Families Committees, just to name a few. And they are really central to everything that we do at Bloomberg to try and debunk, as you mentioned, some of these stereotypes that could come into the workplace. So the strategy of the communities is really to empower employees to role model inclusive behaviour and promote inclusive behaviour across the business and the wider firm, but also out into our communities. We do a lot with the communities, whether that's thought leadership. You know, all communities are inclusive, none are exclusive. Therefore, it doesn't matter who or where you want to join a community, or all communities, everybody's welcome. And I think that really does a lot for a company culture like Bloomberg to really promote and support and educate people around these diverse perspectives. So I think that's a really important piece. I'm not an expert on other companies, and I think Marcello might want to dive into what other companies could do. But what I will say is a company's culture is definitely that unique selling point. And I think, you know, we're very proud of our culture and how we are philanthropic and really value collaboration across borders. That's how important these communities are to us to help drive that. And I think, you know, you can easily replicate products and services, but it's very difficult to replicate a company culture. And so that's a big important piece for talent to be attracted to and to have these diverse points of view that are felt included the minute you walk through the door.
I'd like to turn to Marcello soon about this as well, but before that, I'm really interested to hear Shahid on this point. You know, in your personal experience, what do you think companies could do to better attract and integrate refugees? And what kind of ways are there? Where do you see the deficiencies still, and what could be done to improve that?
Actually, when we come to this point, 3 things are to be discussed. The first thing is the company's role. The second is the government role. And the third is the role of organizations like Recoded and, you know, all of these organizations that support people to improve themselves. So when you come to the company's role, I cannot also make a conclusion about all the companies, but related to my experience, like the company really struggled to get me in. So if the company wants an employee, they won't just, you know, refuse that person or just reject them depending on reasonless things. So if they have the will to get people, it's okay, it's solved. It's easy to be solved, actually. And since you have qualified people, you don't even regard it. But one of the other barriers is the conditions that, you know, have in the hosting country that are, you know, for security reasons, somehow you cannot just move between the cities, and all these restrictions are controlled by the government. So the government takes a big role in the whole process. The third point is the organizations. Like all of these, you know, the organizations are reaching out for people, are training them and giving them skills, like what Recoded did with me. And these skills are not to be educated even in schools. So these 3 sides should collaborate together to get people to work in companies. We cannot discuss how companies can do this job if it's related to other 2 partners. And in my case, at the beginning, I had 2 of them okay, which was being a Recoded alumni, and the other side that the company wanted, you know, me to work. But the third didn't work at the beginning because I had restrictions related to my, residency. So you need to discuss these three things to really have a feasible solution.
And I think with Marcello, we have somebody there in the discussion who brings all the things together: the private organizations, the governments, and the company. So in your experience, in your work with the private sector, what can there be done to improve this triangle, and what ways are there to actually improve this intersection between those three organizations?
Yeah, and this is extremely challenging, Daniel, because the market is really competitive. And then you have big companies who are, after the best talent in the market. And once you find obstacles like the ones that Shahid is describing to hire her, a lot of companies will just, run away and then find another talent who can be easily hired. So the amount of obstacles that someone like her would face, even when she's extremely qualified, she would still not be able to get a job because it's not the opportunity cost for a company to just insist in hiring her is too high, right? So it takes companies that are really serious about diversity, as Rio was saying, having that as a culture of the organization, that you understand the value of having that kind of diversity in your culture. That is critical. That is a step in the first direction. What we've noticed with our partners in the private sector, such as Bloomberg, we also work with SAP, Western Union, other smaller companies that have hired students from our programs in the past, is that they, number one, truly believe that the students coming out of our programs are qualified. And number two, they are very intentional about hiring them because they believe they will add to their company culture. They believe that they can open up doors to new markets or to new clients because of their language skills and life experience. And three, they really want to make sure that they're having a positive impact in the world. It doesn't matter the size of your organization. Today, we do have a responsibility to take care of our people, to take care of our planet. And you can do that through initiatives like that, which is really critical. I think that happened in the case of Shahid. We had other cases of companies that wanted to hire some of our graduates, like Thinkific, which is a company in Canada that has hired one fellow coming out of our bootcamp in Gaziantep. And we sat down and we figured it out, like what is a way that you can hire one of our fellows? And they went through the whole process. And today Nasser is working for that company in Canada. But more importantly, and I think that is a really important point when it comes to employing displaced populations or displaced individuals, is that the moment they're able to have the experience of working for an organization, a company of the size of Bloomberg, they also absorb a lot of the culture, the teachings, the way you work. And even if they don't stay there for the long term, what is the impact of that individual going out of that job and making sure that that impact is multiplying their community? What Shahid is learning today at Excel, it's something that she will take with her if she's not there anymore. So that impact is incredible because they do not have the opportunity to get these jobs often. So that kind of transfer of knowledge rarely reaches populations that have been affected by conflict. And when the private sector gives that opportunity, the impact is not only on an economic utility. It's not about how much you can get in return. It's about how much you're contributing to the outer rings around that person and how they can contribute to their own community. So it's much bigger than just giving someone a job.
Yeah. That brings us neatly to the kind of skill set that is needed. And before we go into the questions from the audience, there are already some coming in. So please, if you have a question, please type it into the chat, and we will look to ask them soon. But before that, I'd like just to ask back to you, Marcello, again. What is the kind of skill set that you're focusing on at Recoded?
Yeah, thank you for that. I like to say that teaching coding is just an excuse, that we actually teach them how to find more about themselves, how to become the better versions of themselves, whatever that looks like for them. So we do teach things like time management, teamwork, communication, but also self-reflection, how to give feedback, how to adapt in a situation like the one we're going through now. We have a curriculum that is focused on that, and we ask our graduates and our students to give as much of their time and effort to this as they do for the coding. And I think this is something she had experienced herself. We do that also on a one-on-one. We try to show as much as possible that how much we care about our students, because we think that they're incredible human beings. And I think that also boosts their confidence, and they come out of our programs knowing that they can achieve their dreams. Whether or not that is just a little bit, not much what we do, but the way they perceive themselves, I don't know. But the fact is that has a positive impact, and we're very proud that they turn out not only to be good coders, but also, incredible, highly motivated human beings.
Let's take this to Shahid. Yeah, I mean, you've been an alumna of the Recoded Android Development Bootcamp.
My eyes started to tear. Like, sure. I was remembering all the, things that we learned there. And this is the best thing about the bootcamp ever, because, and I was discussing this before getting to the, online session. And I was thinking of it on my own. Like, the thing that you really get is a mindset that is that becomes a part of you after graduating from Recoded. We didn't learn about just coding and finishing things as a software, as I call myself, if I work like that, as a computer, without any feelings, without any perception to the social social relations, to interacting with people, to be able to transfer what you're working on and to transfer your ideas. These were the best parts of the things that I've got in my experience. And when Marcel was explaining these things, I couldn't say anything but I was just like saying yeah inside of me. Marcel was explaining as the giver side, but I was the person who experienced this really. So I wanted to interrupt a bit.
But the coding, to learn the coding was fairly helpful as well, I suppose. Or...
For sure. Without coding, I cannot say, all of these skills, GitHub and all of the Agile software are also important for sure. But the things that, change your mindset are also good, because, software can be given by Udacity itself, but other things are not.
Just to explain, I think you were a part of the Recoded Android Development Bootcamp in 2018, right? That's correct. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Ria, you were going to say.
No, I was just going to say, if I may add, I think this is a really interesting conversation because it encompasses all research, and that we talked about digital nomad earlier and the brain and the bots working together in the future. And I think that's just a wonderful way to think about the skill sets of the future. You've got the hard skill sets, right? The technology, the artificial intelligence, NLP, coding, they are all proven to be the skill sets that are emerging for the future. But there is also more emphasis now than ever, as we are working humans with artificial intelligence, and it will be going into the future, to have that softer skill sets, the ability to be able to be professional and collaborate and showcase your emotional intelligence, I read actually the LinkedIn recruiter was saying the top 5 skills for the future are certainly going to be emotional intelligence, creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability. And there was also a big point at the end. We talked earlier in the session about resilience. And I think this group of talent, which is often untapped, probably the people that I've met showcase the most resilience. And so I think, you know, really pull on your anchors when looking for roles around these soft skill sets that you've got alongside the technology. That's what employers are looking for in the future.
Ria, has the pandemic changed the equation in any way there, in terms of the skill set that is needed?
I don't think it's changed necessarily, but I do think resilience obviously has, and I think that's at the forefront. And, you know, in addition to decision making and problem solving skills being key, how can candidates showcase that they are innovative and they are able to quickly pivot in a world now where we just don't know what's going to happen. We really didn't think that we would be working from home and have to quickly be creative around the way that we work. And so I do think employers are more so interested in that ability to be able to be flexible.
Let's turn to the questions from the audience now, and there have already been a few coming in. And the first one actually is for you, Ria. You've been at the beginning. We've been discussing the communities that Bloomberg has, and the question actually refers to exactly that point. Is one of the communities that Bloomberg has for refugees or migrants, and I'm also curious to know how the thought leadership you do within communities is then spread throughout the wider company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, great, thank you. We don't have a specific refugee displacement community, but within the communities we definitely do have, and we hire. I'm aware of several refugees who are very active within our communities or philanthropic events within Bloomberg. The thought leadership is something that's very important. And, you know, I was thinking about how do we ensure that everybody in the organization, from hiring managers to leaders to employees, is aware of sensitivities, diversity and inclusion, and again, clubbing together to debunk any of these stereotypes. And so we do a lot of panel discussions across the organization. Often tailoring them as well across the region. So, for example, most recently we had a very large open conversation about race, and particularly in the US with Black Lives Matters movements, etc. That was very important. That translated differently in China and our Asia colleagues, but we still had that conversation. And I think the thought leadership not only comes from talking about these sensitive, provoking topics to educate each other and to support each other, but also through trainings and like you say, whilst there isn't a specific community, you will find somebody across any of these communities that would be able to relate and include, you'd feel included.
Before we proceed to the next question, I just wanted to briefly let you all know that we will be posting a short feedback survey in the chat a bit later that we would very much like you to fill out. So because this will help us improve our future speaker sessions, and you know, we would obviously very much appreciate your feedback. So please think about that. And there's another really good questions that I would give to, well, both Marcella and Ria. Maybe we'll start with Marcella. Are there any signs or indicators that you have seen for companies that are more open to hiring employees from refugee backgrounds? I know there's a lot of talk these days from companies about diversity and inclusion, but for the companies that are actually implementing it in their hiring practice, are you seeing commonalities?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to go first, Ria?
I mean, I can speak from a Bloomberg perspective. briefly, you know, we have been partnering with various organizations since 2015 and beyond. We by no means believe that we're experts, and we will definitely admit that we've got a lot more to do, and there's various different partnerships that we are in talks with and you know, working with down the line, from the Temp partnership, etc. And I think there is a change. I think there's a movement right now, and that movement's here to stay across all facets of D&I. So I'm hopeful that, you know, more and more organizations, I know we certainly are focused, but I'm hopeful more and more organizations will follow that lead as well.
Marcello, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think there are some important initiatives that have come up since specifically the Syrian crisis, which is now, you know, an endless war in Syria. But, you know, Ria mentioned one, that the TEND partnership that has been this pledge to hire refugees. And I think that has been very effective in, I would say, Western countries. So refugees who ended up in the US, Canada, parts of Europe, I think that partnership has been a way for them to get hired by the companies in that partnership, or other companies that have pledged to hire refugees. I think the reality in some of the countries where we work are much different. In Turkey or Iraq or Lebanon, there is no such partnership or pledge or commitment to hire refugees that can be really an indication that companies are ready to hire them. I think you have isolated case, such as the case with Shahid that she has explained so clearly, where a company is willing to hire and willing to go through all the hurdles to get her hired, but there's not a concerted effort to make sure that the message goes out and then you're able to hire. That, of course, makes our job a little bit more difficult, because we have to go company by company and explain why it is important to have diversity and to hire refugees. So I would like to see initiatives like the ones that have been led in other countries that have been successful, that also reaches the countries that have been hosting the largest number of refugees.
There's a question for Shahid as well, and a fairly interesting one. I'm sure everyone would like to hear it. What do you think was the main reason that you got accepted in your current job?
Actually, it would be wrong if I say there was one reason. There were many reasons to get accepted, not just related to me, but related to the things that magically happened. But, you know, I can count a couple of these things. You know, all of the efforts that you put on yourself and all of the affections that you have from the outside, like the boot camps that I've participated in, the push-up that I had from, you know, Recoded, because somehow my network and all of the things that helped me to start working or reach out to people started when I was there. Another thing, and is the tick point, is that I've got the citizenship. Otherwise, it would be just impossible to work. This is the main reason I can say now, regardless of everything.
Thank you. I'd like to take one more question, which, you know, we've spoken a lot now about refugees getting jobs with companies in the host country, or getting remote work. But what about entrepreneurialism within the refugee or host community? Marcello, I think that's a really good question for you to answer.
Sure, I can take this one, and I think that is an important point. We have done a couple of entrepreneurship programs in the past, and I think it's an incredibly difficult path, but a super important one. So the challenges that some refugees face, or even communities that have been affected by conflict. So I just want to expand a little bit on the population here, is that in places like Iraq or Turkey, the incentives for someone to start a business, especially a tech business, are pretty low. So there is, you know, investors will really be risk averse. There's not a lot of investment coming in, which means that companies have to really bootstrap if you're an entrepreneur. And the incentives are usually from, you know, brave organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs in these places, but are usually, you know, a little bit of money here, a little bit of prize there, which is really difficult for them to grow their organizations if they do not have a very robust revenue generating model. So a lot of companies end up failing right in the beginning, or they go into the informality because there are so many hurdles for them to register their business that is not worth registering. So they end up being very informal, and that also makes them more fragile to, you know, economic and political situations in those countries. What I have observed is that once you have some success cases and you try to understand why that happens, that could be a really good way for entrepreneurs to get on the entrepreneurial track if that is their desire. Recently, Lizo, which is a company in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, has been acquired with, you know, a purchase of 7 digits, which is a landmark in Iraq, and that is a very positive example of the potential to follow on an entrepreneurial path. But the challenges are really, really great for refugees who try to do that. In Turkey, it has actually served to a lot of refugees who could not join the formal workforce to register as a sole proprietor and start a business and make a living out of this. Like, you know that there's so many Syrians with businesses in Turkey, a lot of them in the hospitality sector with restaurants, which is amazing. But when you think about having a business that is tech driven, you need some sort of investment because the costs are really higher, and that's where the obstacles are. Okay. If you allow me, Daniel, I just wanted to address very quickly another question from Troy, which was about connectivity. Just very briefly to touch on this point, it's something that we at Recruitment are thinking every single day. Connectivity is a disability for displaced populations, and no matter how much we try to help them to integrate the workforce, if they have no way to connect in a world that is highly remote, then that is going to be an issue. So we don't have much time to discuss that, but an incredibly important point.
Thanks a lot, Marcello, for addressing that, because that actually allowed us to, even if it was really briefly, to actually answer all the questions that we got from the audience, which is really good. We're coming to an end, unfortunately. I think we could extend this conversation for much longer, but we have to come to an end here, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Ria, Shahid, and Marcello for joining this conversation. I think it has been hugely interesting. Thank you all also in the audience for joining us today, and also for asking such really interesting and smart questions. I think it really made the discussion really much better. Remember that this is only the second of 4 sessions we have on the topic of digital trends shaping opportunities for youth in the Middle East. So please join us for the other sessions as well. You can go to re-coded.com or directly to re-coded.com/Bloomberg-sessions to learn more about the other sessions. I hope you will join us for those. And this is also a reminder to please fill out the short feedback survey, which has been posted in the chat already very shortly. As I said, this will really help us improve the speaker sessions. Thank you very much again. And with that, I would like to hand over to Alexandra for the final words.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for being such a brilliant moderator. And thank you everybody for joining us for our second session. And for all your incredibly thoughtful questions. And we're looking forward to continuing the discussion in the upcoming session. See you all later. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.